And we are back. So video number 7. And this is going to be more case study, how to put together everything we've have discussed so far before we get into more details about everything else, really. So Dave's going to fire away with a live example of someone he has worked with. Obviously, no mentioning names or anything because we're keeping it private. But just giving an example how everything we've talked about before can be put together for a real person.
Okay, yeah, and so I think the important thing, just like we stated from previous videos, is knowing who you are. Like, what are your deficits? What are your requirements, and those sort of things. So that's probably the most important part before you do anything, right?
Mm.
So this particular person, he's a man. He's early 30s. Has a high performance sales job, door to door salesman. Um, but he's not just like the employee going to door. He actually runs a team of door to door salesmen. Okay. So that means that he's not just physically active, he has to be very mentally on top of things because he has meetings in the morning, meetings in the evening, and all of this activity in the middle of the day, right? Of performing physical and mental, right? Going door to door, walking, not necessarily extremely physical, but he is moving around and using energy, etc. And he has some advantages and disadvantages, right? So, advantages, he's outside. He's outside a lot. That's an advantage. I can't stress that enough to anybody. If you're
Which
not outside,
is something a lot of people will kind of never understand, like what's the difference.
yeah, it's a really big difference. Like, biologically different, like that he can literally have a twin that spends most of his, has a desk job, and he has this walking job. Their biology will be like 180 degrees different. So I cannot stress that enough. The amount of time that you spend outside changes everything. Okay.
Mm.
so so that's an advantage. Disadvantages, he has to wake up before the sun comes up to get all his preparation ready for morning meetings, that sort of stuff. Another disadvantage, he has to stay up late to kind of make a inventory of how his team did and who's lacking, who needs help, etc. for the next day. Those are disadvantages. I can't stress that enough. What does that sound like? Everyday people that stay up till 11 p.m. every single night, staring at their phone or their TV or whatever. That's a disadvantage. So if this guy had a choice, and I'm his coach, he wouldn't be doing this, but he has to because of his job, right? So those are disadvantages and advantages at the biological level of his environment. Okay, he's exposed to that every single day. So right off the bat, we have to ensure that his disadvantages don't disrupt sleep and recovery, because I don't care what he's doing. If he's not sleeping and recovering, he's not going to do it for very long. Okay.
Mm.
So
So
where do
talk
we start?
about more about training experience and
Oh,
how
yeah,
the
yeah,
training
yeah,
is laid
yeah.
out. So what time is he training? How often? How
Yes.
experienced is and all of
So
things.
experience is, I would call him a novice turning into an intermediate from our perspective. He's not, he's statistics, he's 180 pounds, so 80 kilos or so. He's average size, like, I don't know in centimeters, but he's 5 foot 10 inches, so average height. And as far as body fat goes, he's average body fat. Advantage, he is an ex-athlete. He used to run track and field. Okay. So he does have mitochondrial density that's going to be higher than people that are not athletes. Okay.
So
So
I think this is also where people kind of misjudge experience in track and field doesn't mean experience in gym. That's why you probably class him kind of novice intermediate rather than someone who's advanced into training.
correct. Yes, because it's a different concept entirely, right? Like, as far as training for that and training with weights, right? Now, his goal physique wise is not necessarily to get to 100 kilos, but he definitely wants to basically any other high performing person. He wants to be like, I just want to feel good and not be hampered by my body. He's closer to the 15% body fat range, and at 80 kilos, he kind of looks a little chubby, right? Okay, so he's not super muscular, he's not super fat, but he would like to be better, right? So in my concept, when I approach somebody like that, he is also natural, right? So he's not taking any PEDs, he's not on TRT, he's just natural, right? So right off the bat, progress is going to be at a lower rate. So what can we affect quickly, right? And that's body fat. We can change body fat way faster than we can change muscle mass. So right off the bat, I'm thinking he's probably going to weigh 10, maybe 15 pounds less when I'm done with him, but he's going to look way better, right? And that's really what he wants, right? He's not necessarily like, obviously he doesn't want to lose muscle through this. Like,
so is there any advantage in trying to burn body fat first, apart from it being much quicker, which a lot of people usually don't agree, or it's really hard to lose body fat, but it's not, it's the easiest thing you can do.
Yes.
So is there any other advantage on focusing on that first instead of trying to just go all in hypertrophy block?
Yes, big advantage. So we're going to talk about some things that people might not think about and things that are kind of obvious. So the big advantage to going that route is if he has any kind of insulin sensitivity issues, we're probably going to fix that in this little journey, right? So he's going to look better and he's going to come out of it with better insulin sensitivity. Better insulin sensitivity is always better. It's just that simple. There really isn't a time.
So it's a good old rule: the leaner you are, the quicker you can actually grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's natural, so quickness is relative, right? But at the same time, you're in a better position, right? There's no question about that. So that's pretty obvious for anybody that's probably listened to this, and maybe not, right? Here's something that people don't think about, right? That is, I think, even more beneficial than what I just said. When you burn body fat, you make more energy than if you burn glycogen. It's just that simple, like at the mitochondrial level. Okay. What does the mitochondria do? It takes food and turns it into energy. The byproducts of that are carbon dioxide. Okay. You breathe that out, and water in your mitochondria. Okay. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a huge deal, because what that does is it makes your mitochondria more efficient at everything that it does. Literally, that means everything that you do, from the simple act of moving your fingers to actually growing muscle tissue. More efficient mitochondria is always, always better. And I would argue that most sicknesses start with bad mitochondria. They're not functioning at 100%. So what does that mean? You get defective cells, because the powerhouse of the cells, the thing that governs a good cell versus a bad cell, is what is the mitochondria inside that cell doing, right? So it's hard to think about. It boggles your mind a little bit if you're not really into that, but it's a huge deal, right? So but burning body,
it's nearly as it almost translates into, if you are just staying hydrated, you're going to have more energy.
Yeah, it really does, because you're providing external water, right? And then you can amplify that external water by helping your mitochondria create more water, because burning body fat, or any fat really, that's where sometimes being in a keto diet, I'm not against any diet, keto diets, high carb, low carb. It's a tool, right? What are you trying to accomplish, right? If somebody is sick, and the very first thing I go, okay, well, we're going to eliminate some carbohydrates, see if we can get a little bit more fat being oxidized, so that we can get your mitochondria to start making more water intracellularly inside the cell, so that it is more efficient, right? Because what I said earlier, most diseases, most sicknesses start at the mitochondrial level. Something's off there. Dehydrated, so maybe you're just not drinking enough water, or internally dehydrated, your mitochondria are not efficient. So let's pull on some levers that make them more efficient, right?
Yeah. And this brings us back to why we talked about that you need to get your physiology right first.
Absolutely.
There's no point of hammering something and just going all in when you're not even a baseline what your body should be in terms of handling your hydration, making sure your actual blood panel is good to start with, and so on and so forth, which a lot of people kind of ignore. I just had a chat last week about somebody who was telling me that they don't need to do blood tests because they've never taken anything, and I'm like, really? Those are usually the ones that really have bad issues with their health just because they're so ignorant.
Well, and we live in a modern world where there are things that are affecting your health and you don't even know about them.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't care if you took anything or not, that does not automatically qualify that you're healthy, period.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people say I don't take anything, I've had a couple guys who were ex-rugby players, but they were on painkillers every single day. And I'm like, dude, you got like grade 2 kidney failure. And they just look at me like big eyes. What do you mean? How? I'm like, how many painkillers have you taken in your life? Right. And then the penny drops. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that, right? You're just taking things and you don't even realize that that's affecting your health. And other things, right? Just being in a city, not being outside.
Yeah.
That's literally affecting your health, right? I just mentioned that's an advantage.
Or just being in an office,
Yeah, like absolutely.
A lot of people now office in their home now, and they rarely go out.
Yeah. So I do not agree with that. You need some blood work. You need to get your biology in order. So did we cover the
so we need a training, we covered training experience. What is the outline of a training day? So easy training in the morning, in the afternoon, midday. Because basically it sounds like a very, very like busy individual.
Yeah. So for him, training in the morning is not really an option just because he has to get his team up and running, right? So he has to take care of his team first. So the best time of day for him so about 11 a.m. is when that's all done. And then from there till about 1, he has a 2-hour gap of kind of downtime, and then around 1 p.m. is when they start knocking on doors, right? Because most people are going to work, and coming back in the afternoon. So that's when they start getting out and trafficking, the streets and stuff and knocking on doors. So he has a gap of about 2.5 hours from 11 a.m. to 1:30, 2 p.m., which is not bad. That's great, right? So first thing that I'm going to have him do is I'm going to have him scope out a couple different places where he can train, whether it's at his hotel or at a gym. And I mentioned, this guy's just not wanting to lose muscle. He's wanting to gain muscle and lose body fat. So the gym setup is not necessarily needing to be super fancy, right?
Yeah, nothing specific really. That's
No. He's not a power lifter that requires a powerlifting gym or a strong man. So this can be done anywhere for him. So he's going to train at 1 p.m. Or half an hour early if he gets done half an hour early.
Would that be optimal, or would you change something for someone who has a freedom of choice when to train?
So luckily, this is an advantage for him. This is actually where I would describe optimal training time. If you have the ability to train at any point in time during the day, somewhere between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. is optimal training time, because hopefully you've also had the ability to get out in the sun or at least get some infrared light on you, so that your cells are more efficient at producing everything from ATP to handling biological waste and all of that. So if you're going to train and tax your body, that's like the best time of day to do it. If you're somebody who spends most of the time inside, then I would say, when do you get off work? Can you be outside for an hour or so before you go train? Then that person's optimal time would be different, right? But because of his scenario, and if you described it, a person that can train any time of day, I would say if you can train any time of day, that also means by default you can expose yourself to some sunlight any time of day. Do it in the middle of the day.
So, for example, if someone is struggling, hey, walk to the gym.
That's exactly, you're 100% right. Walk, bike to the gym. Yes. Get 20-30 minutes of actual daylight exposure minimum before you step into the gym. Ideally you live somewhere where there's a garage gym or an outdoor gym. Then you don't have to worry about any of this shit. You go train outside. That's the best. It's
Muscle Beach.
Yeah, I'm being serious. Like if I had the choice to train outside year round, I will. But where I live currently, and that will probably change. I can't train outside all year round. But when I have the advantage, I will take that advantage.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so anyway, so that's where he's going to train. That's why he's going to train there, right? Because he's kind of forced to do that, and that's okay because it actually works out to his advantage. And then the other thing is his night. He's not going to be able to go to bed until probably like 10:30 at the earliest. So
Mm.
late night, right? So we have to take into account a few things of that nature. Now, food wise, where is he going to eat? So he's not that big of a person, so he can clearly get in all his food requirements in 3 meals, like as long as he's prepared, right? And so I'm going to have his first meal um, within 30 minutes of waking up. So he's going to wake up at about 6 a.m. So by 6:30, he should have a meal in him. That meal is going to be higher in protein and higher in fats because he's not directly preparing for activity, physical activity, for the next 3 hours. He's actually preparing for mental activity. He's got to get a slideshow ready. He's got to do a presentation and talk to his group, right? So higher fats, higher protein, uh, and within 30 minutes of waking up. That way, he's not mentally sluggish by the time the meetings start. Right? We don't want him eating during the meeting or literally right before. We want that food digesting and fueling him as he goes. So his meetings start at 7:30 and they will go all the way till usually 10:30. So about a 3-hour meeting block.
So let's say this person is already optimized all his nutrition. What kind of supplements you would add in his breakfast?
Yes. So perfect. Yeah. So because he's having a late night and because he is already getting good sun exposure, his vitamin D, I'm still going to include some vitamin D, but it's going to be like the basic, like 1,000 units of vitamin D, 2,000 units, nothing more, nothing crazy, because his particular work is in the southwest of the United States. So he's getting a lot of sun exposure, right? Especially because he walks through the door every afternoon. But because he's missing the morning sunrise, because he's in meetings, okay, and this actually happened. I convinced him and he kind of went with it, kind of didn't. So it was days on and off where he would have his meetings outside. Okay. I cannot stress enough. Morning sunlight is very important. You can do it outside, it's better. And he mentioned this. This is a real thing. He's like, when we had our morning meetings outside, there was more energy in the room, in the group. There was more vigor in like, yeah, let's seize the day type of mentality. So he actually capitalized that and started doing that more regularly as the weather allowed. So vitamin D in the morning, minimal dose, and then copper and selenium. The copper being there to kind of facilitate possible poor sleep that has, because he's going to bed a little bit later. The selenium is to make sure that he has plenty of substrate for his body to start turning T4 into T3 early in the day so that he has lots of energy in the morning, right? We want him to be able to wake up at 6 a.m. without an alarm. No alarm needed. He just wakes up, he's ready to go, he's on fire, he's doing his shit, right? So very basic supplements like we'll call it nutraceuticals, right? These aren't necessarily performance enhancing, they're more biological substrates that need to kind of be in there. So vitamin D, copper, and selenium. Now, if we want to tick up the performance, right? He's just struggling to really, maybe he's been doing this for 3 or 4 months, right? And this is kind of typical to door-to-door salesmen is they have seasons of like 5 months where they make all their money in 5 months, right? So we're talking $300,000-$400,000 in 3 or 4 months, right? So these guys are getting it every day, 7 days a week, right? So you're going to get worn out, right? So when that starts to happen, this is an ACE card that we pull, which is alpha GPC is the starting point. That's kind of like the basic of like augmenting the fuel for the brain and not getting like that brain fog and burnout. So we start supplementing with that. We don't start right off the bat in the season. We kind of wait till, hey, I'm kind of experiencing that. We start supplementing with that. The next step up from that is something like adrafinil, which is related to modafinil or kind of Adderall, that type of thing. But the thing about adrafinil is that it's not, your body turns it into substrate. It's like a precursor to these. So it's not like we're overstimulating your body. We're letting your body take that and turn a lot of things on if needed, right? So again, it's not quite top tier, but if we need to go there, then the next step would be something like modafinil. Okay. Now,
So how do you cope with these things if you haven't slept for like a week or two properly?
I wouldn't be doing
when do you pull the plug and say, just look, hey, you need to rest?
So very good point. So then it becomes, okay, I haven't been sleeping good. So the first thing we start doing is not using these. We start with actually something like lion's mane to start ameliorating the stress of not sleeping well. So lion's mane has some interactions with the glia in your brain, which are like the repairman in your brain, right? And so if you're not sleeping well, that means that that's functioning not as good, right? For whatever reason, maybe it's just poor sleep, or maybe the time of sleep is too short for you. It could be lots of reasons, right? But we want to augment that. So we take some lion's mane in the morning with your copper, selenium, and all of that. And we keep that in the background. So like the very first thing is, and you'll notice this, if people start taking not necessarily alpha-GPC, but adrafinil or modafinil, things of that nature, they're like, oh, I'm getting run down. I can clearly feel it. Immediately, I pull back the dose or pull it completely and just stick with alpha-GPC and go with a lion's mane support in the morning. And we just keep that in.
So if you add these as well, do you need to take more precaution about hydration and things like that?
Absolutely. So the moment the moment you start adding in something like alpha-GPC, adrafinil, or modafinil, you are by default setting yourself up to run hotter, right? So an engine that runs hotter needs a better coolant system. Your coolant system is water. It's a lot of other things too, but that's going to be, think of it that way. It's easier to think of it that way. You're going to need more water, especially when you take into account he's walking and it's hot outside, right?
Which is what something I bring up, because a lot of people just get dehydrated and then end up injured. And you're like,
absolutely. Oh. Yeah. And by more water, I really mean like 3 liters is like minimum. If you're not drinking 3 liters of water, this guy in particular, you're failing, right?
Yeah, and it's not even big guy. 80 kilos is
no
very
right.
average.
Yeah, very average. Yeah, so he needs 3 liters of water minimum. He has that written in his program. Ideally, it's somewhere between 4 and 5 liters of water, especially when we take it up with some adrafinil, or he didn't have to go as far as like modafinil.
So as much as you mentioned this, a lot of people will struggle with, I'm running to toilet every 2 seconds now. How would you deal with that?
Actually, that tends to resolve itself after the first week. You'll be surprised.
Like, yeah, this is funny because people usually give up after 2 days and like, oh, I can't keep up. I usually personally suggest them just time it when you drink it. Like in the morning, you have a certain amount of volume of fluid you're going to drink, then between meals and so on and so forth. And your body just gets used to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I have him, so this is not really a hack. It's a trick, right? To do exactly what you just said. You don't have to time it. Just drink 1 liter at a time. So literally buy 4 liters, right? And when you sit down to eat something, you're going to drink that liter. A little bit later, when you're thirsty, you'll drink another liter, right? And so forth. Because if you put it all in 1 gallon or like a 3-liter jug, most people, especially when I tell them to up their hydration, they just start drinking it all the time. And yeah, you're going to be urinating all the time. Right. So, but even if you do that, even if you have a big 3-liter jug and you just are sipping it all the time, your body catches on within 4 or 5 days. And then next thing you know, you're just urinating normally, no matter when you drink your water. So it's just a matter of like doing it enough. And it's really,
I believe hydration alone would be like an hour stroke. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to carry on. So basically, if you are struggling with getting hydrated, it just have to be a ritual. It can't be something like a habit which you go do unconsciously. You have to consciously make yourself hydrated, just because otherwise you're holding yourself back from making any kind of progress. And not only that, not only making progress and having more energy, but recovery as well is going to suffer if you're not hydrated.
Absolutely. And so that kind of covers the morning, right? I think basically I touched on what needs to happen in the morning, what he's going to eat. And then the next thing is this 3 hour block of meetings, right? He gets done with his meetings. The next thing I want him to do is food. So, because the next thing that needs to happen is his training. That's going to be coming up in an hour. So 10:30, 11 a.m., he gets the opportunity to kind of gather his wits. His team has just gone back to their rooms and are getting prepared for the afternoon rampage on the walking the houses and knocking on doors. So he goes back to his room or to wherever he wants, and he's going to have a more classic bodybuilding style meal, which is going to be high protein, really high carbohydrate, fairly low fat. You can think of, your basic chicken, broccoli, rice type of meal, right? It doesn't have to be those things. I prefer it if it was a little variety there, but we want, for him specifically, I'm wanting him to have right around 100 grams of carbs with 40 grams of protein, and keep that protein source, something like lean steak or chicken or something along those lines. So he's going to get about 12 grams of fat. That's not much. What that's going to do is going to set him up, because he's also not really afraid of injections. So he is taking a Kaioken supplement.
L-carnitine and choline.
Yep, L-carnitine and choline. So these are going to arrive to the party of the training session at the same time that carbohydrates are arriving at the party of the training session as well. So they're going to amplify how well he can train, both from a raw fuel substrate of like the carbohydrate coming in, and a not direct fuel substrate, carbohydrates coming in, and direct fuel substrates like choline. So that's direct fuel for the electrical system of your brain, or at least in this context, it will be. And then the L-carnitine amplifying what the food and fats are doing. So the carbohydrates and fats for the training session. So that's, so he eats his food, he takes his Kaioken supplement, carnitine, choline, injectable at that same time.
So why injectable over pills?
Purely for being able to arrive at a super physiological level the moment you inject it.
Pretty much fast, yeah.
Yeah,
let's be honest, to get carnitine to do the work, you would have to swallow so many pills.
You'd be sick. You wouldn't be able to eat your food. Right? I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. You'd be like, oh shit, this is disgusting, and I feel like shit, and my food it's not going down very well.
And it's just amino acids. It's like,
Yeah. I mean, these things are, so L-carnitine is an amino acid. We'll just touch on it a little bit. L-carnitine is an amino acid that's crucial for functioning of your mitochondria, like the L-carnitine shuttling fatty acids into the mitochondria. And then go back to the very beginning, bringing fats into the mitochondria creates advantages, right? With intracellular hydration and all of that stuff. So not just the fact that you're burning the body fat, the byproducts of burning body fat or any other fat creates better hydration in the cell, right? So it's doing a lot of things that are positive in there. Choline is can be turned into acetylcholine, and it's a neurotransmitter influencer that makes it so electrical signals are now better. You can think a little bit more clearly. You have a little bit more volition in the gym, so your movements are crisper or more. You're able to get more out of each movement, right, or each contraction, if you want to call it that. So it amplifies the actual workout. And then obviously the food is just setting you up because you're going to be doing activity, and you want some left over for after the activity. Like, the activity isn't the thing that's going to make you better. It's the recovering from that activity, right? So you need to have a surplus in there from anything that you can get your hands on as far as like energy and recovery there. So especially
because he's in calorie deficit, if he's trying to lose some body fat and training as a bodybuilder style kind of routine, it's exhausting. Like, strength training is not going to wear you out as much.
No, but it does take longer, and he doesn't have a lot of time, right? So he's got this potential 2-hour gap. He's got to get some food in there. He's got to let that digest a little bit. Then he's got to train, right? So maximum, he's got 90 minutes, right? Which is a good training session, right? But he's going to a gym, so we don't know exactly what the landscape of the gym is going to be every day. Like, Maybe it's a dead gym, maybe it's a really busy gym, right? But nonetheless, the training itself was going to be supersets, timed rest, a lot of glycolytic work. Let's get a lot of stimulus for the time that we're in the gym, right? And so we're just setting him up to be able to execute on that. We don't want him sluggish and needing to take a lot of time between sets and stuff like that. And the carnitine, choline, high carbohydrate meal, that's all going to push towards, hey, this guy can now handle shorter rests a little bit better and get a lot of work done.
And this is something that's forgotten, is that you don't need to run yourself into ground to get results.
No, you don't.
You know,
no, you don't.
Even if, especially if you haven't done any kind of training before, and this is completely like novel stimulus to you, you're going to get results really quick.
We're literally
you broke up a little bit for like you couldn't I couldn't hear your what did you say?
I said for him at the beginning it was very short workouts, like 45 minutes, like so basically like 3 supersets, so six exercises in superset fashion, literally 10 minutes of the first 2 exercises, another 10 or 12 minutes of the next 2, another 10 or 12 there with a 10-minute warm-up, so literally like 50 minutes.
And it's just to show that these delusions that comes from social media, that you need to die for this and whatever, is not necessary. You're gonna get results no matter what.
No, absolutely. And that's all relative to who you are, right? Like obviously there's people that won't be able to get results with a 45-minute workout, but that's not who we're talking about.
Yeah, much more advanced. And
yeah. And so after the workout, he's going to have his biggest meal of the day. And this meal, most people will be like, oh, he's going to eat a lot of carbohydrates to replenish all the glycogen. We took care of that. We took care of that with the previous
meal.
Yeah. And so he's going to get done training at about 2 p.m., right? What does he need to do now? He needs to get his shower on, he needs to get a meal in him, and he needs to get out working, right? This guy's still about to go work, right? So we don't want him feeling sluggish. We don't want him having like the after Thanksgiving sluggishness. So we don't want him to have a shit ton of carbohydrates spiking his insulin and making him drowsy, right? That's just not the thing that he's going to be able to accomplish. So then that third meal, that third meal of the day is after training, but we're going to go with medium carbohydrates. So something around 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates with about 60 to 80 grams of protein and plenty of vegetables there.
This is where we need to plug in, is that if you have heard that you only can absorb 30, 40 grams of protein per meal, this is absolute garbage. It's just that doesn't work like that.
It does not work like that. No. And this isn't even like shake. This is not from a shake. Like he can have a shake or not, but I just told him, like, just go buy some food. Just go buy some food. Like that's the thing. This guy has the ability. He has money, right? Like money's not a thing. It's time and getting efficiency of where he needs to go next. So he actually just orders his food with DoorDash from something like Applebee's. So he'll literally order like a plain potato with steamed vegetables and a steak. Okay. And it just comes right to his Airbnb where he's staying or whatever. Yeah. Right. So he'll go hit a shower after this, eat his food, and then he's ready to go work. With that food, I am having him take some curcumin because we don't want more inflammation or more, we essentially want to start the recovery process, right? And so I have him eat all his food, then take the curcumin to slow down the digestion so that by the time the curcumin's starting to kick into his bloodstream, it's been 2 or 3, maybe even 4 hours after the session is over. We don't want more inflammation at that point. We're taking a little bit of curcumin. So we are amplifying recovery from the training session. Okay. Then what we're going to do is he's going to work pretty like the early afternoon from about 2 p.m. to about 4 or 5 p.m. is a little bit dead most of the time. People aren't quite home yet, but he does get some sales there. So he starts around there. But it lets him walk. It lets him digest all this food that he just had. It lets him get the groove for like feeling out what neighborhood he wants to hit later in the evening. And then he will have another meal that's very similar to the first meal of the day. Low carbohydrates, a little higher fat, a little bit more protein, and that's done at about 6 p.m. That's actually the money hour for these people. So he eats that so that he's now sharp as a tack mentally here so that he can make the most sales, because that's when people are home. They're starting to get home at about 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And then all the way, they knock on doors all the way till the sun goes down, which is about 9:30. Okay. So from 6 to 9:30, he's got 3 hours to just crush it. Again, we don't want sluggishness. So the carbohydrates are a little bit lower, lots of meat and good healthy fats, like so in that particular meal, my go-to is, hey, go have yourself a seafood meal, something like a nice big salmon fillet with vegetables on the side, or even like steak and eggs, right? A lot of external nutrition, healthy fats, etc., that are going to digest very, very well. And then at that time, we don't take any supplements unless he's like, oh, I'm just feeling off. I need a mental boost. At that point in time, then we will pull out some of our ACE cards. Some of our ACE cards are things like the Kayocan supplement, but this time in the CEO version, so higher choline. Or it can be just alpha GPC if we're not quite to the stage that we need something like that. But he opts for the Kayocan for the same reasons for the training session. Well, actually, in this case, it's the CEO product. The reason is because he wants it active right away because his window is short, right? He's like 3.5 hours of working hard. So he will take his CEO product with these higher fat, lower carbohydrate meal at about 6 p.m. And then he just goes out and crushes it for another 3, 4, 5 hours. Now his day's not over yet. Now he's got to go back to the hotel and put on kind of like a post-mortem, right, of how the day went, not just for him, but for his team, because that can dictate where he has to move his team. Like, we got to go to another part of the city, or maybe we should go to a different city next week. Like, is this place dead? Are we not getting enough sales? He's the guy handling that, right? Like, he's the guy telling his team where to go. So he has to do a post-mortem every single day to get an idea of, did we saturate this market already or not, right? And so he used to do all that mining and everything of the post-mortem of that night. I convinced him to just scrap that, get the data, get it written down, get it recorded, however he wants to do it. Do the mining in the morning. He's already waking up early. He'll be sharper. He'll be mentally better if he gets better sleep to be able to execute a plan better while it's fresh on his mind in the morning. And so what I have him do, because he's not going to do any of the data mining that night, he's just going to do the collecting. What I have him do is literally set up a Zoom call and Zoom call his meeting, his post-mortem meeting of all his team, so that he doesn't have to mentally log what the team tells him, right? So he's freeing up his memory to just capitalize on his performance for the day, right? Because he physically experienced that performance. That's very crucial to just kind of unload that. And so when he's doing that, he's not going to have another meal. It's already late in the evening, right? So he's already ate. He ate at 6 p.m. He did all his stuff. He's kind of exhausted. He does his little Zoom meeting, and at that same time, he takes a little bit of GABA and a little bit of ashwagandha to start facilitating. Hey, when this meeting is over, I'm ready to go to sleep. He also wears some blue blocking glasses because he has to do it indoors, and there's lots of bright lights. They do it in the hotel lobby or like meeting room. So lots of bright lights, computers all over the place. I have him put on some blue light blocking glasses and GABA, ashwagandha. There are some ACE cards in there if he's struggling to go to sleep. Like maybe he had a ridiculous day of sales. That happens with these people, and they're just amped, right? He's not going to go to sleep, or at least it's going to be very hard. So that's when we put in a little bit of Selenk or SR 9009. Those are ACE cards. We don't use them that often, but when we know, hey, it's going to be a rough night to get to sleep early or to just get good sleep, we will pull those. The Selenk is in a Kayoken product called the Time Chamber. He didn't feel like he needed to do that. He got really good results from the GABA and ashwagandha, so never had to use the Selenk or SR, but he had them on hand.
So when you
And
pull on this, can you touch upon why would you not suggest him to eat meal closer to bedtime? Because a lot of people will eat just before going to bed. And also touch upon Selenk and what SR actually do.
yeah, yeah. So the reason why you don't want to eat that late at night is because it's already dark. So a lot of this goes back to like, what's the daylight cycle in your time? You don't normally want to eat when it's dark, because especially if you are inside under fake lighting. So lots of studies out there where they literally take people and animals, this is where it started, feed them the same exact meal outside and then put them inside and feed them that same meal. They are more insulin resistant inside. Just avoid that. Just avoid that. Get your calorie. Like, if there is a definite reason, hey, I have to eat at night because I literally didn't eat anything all day long, cool. But don't do that often, right? Don't do that. Don't make that your habit, because now you're setting yourself up to have a habit that's not helping your insulin sensitivity, right? So it's one of those things where if you have to, I understand. Don't make it a habit, is all I'm saying. So the habit for him is, and usually he, especially with these types of people, if he's had a good day, he's not even hungry. Like he's like, I'm living off the high of I just scored. Freaking, you see what I mean? So for him, it wasn't even a big deal as far as like not eating after sunset. But that is kind of a rule that I have with everybody. If you can avoid it, do it, because it sets up better habits. Go back to the previous video. Habits of rituals of sunlight and eating are extremely crucial to kind of bulletproofing you from making stupid habits, right? Like that stupid habits create stupid biology. So don't do that. And then as far as Selenk and SR 9009, so they are both well, not necessarily both related, but Selenk is more of a brain antioxidant, and that's obviously going to help kind of like ameliorate what goes on with reactive oxygen species in the brain as you go to sleep. So it's going to improve the quality of sleep.
So just to clear out reactive oxygen species as well, because a lot of people will not understand it.
It just means all the waste that's happened as far as like, everybody's kind of familiar with like lactate, like that's a waste product of like exercising, right? So think of like reactive oxygen species as a biological waste product of being alive, being awake, right?
Yeah, and that's something that's like a crucial thing, that even if you don't work out, you will still have them.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if we know that, hey, he's been excited a lot, right? And it's because he's had a lot going on, a lot of processes going on. Energy voltage in the brain is high, right? So that means that by default, he's making more reactive oxygen species, right? And so let's ameliorate some of that, because he's already probably going to get short sleep anyway. Let's just make the sleep that he does get better at ameliorating all of that byproduct. So that's what Selenk does. It does some other interesting things, but those aren't really applicable in the scenario where he's taking it at night. SR 9009 is a Rev ERB agonist. So what that does is it literally pulls the brake on circadian rhythm. So if you stay up late, it's easier to stay up late again, and you do it again and you do it again, because you're shifting your circadian rhythm. You're shifting. Okay. So if he's already knows, hey, it's going to be hard for me to go to sleep, I'm probably going to start shifting my circadian rhythm in a negative way. Let's pull the brake on it a little bit. That is what SR 9009 does. It starts pulling the brake on your circadian rhythm so that the next day you're actually still ready to go to bed at the time you should be ready to go to bed. Okay. So again, this is not a thing you take every night. These are things that you have to be thinking a little bit, right? Or have somebody on like me telling you, hey, this is why you want to use it. This is when you don't want to use it, right? And pull the cards like that. Other things that he takes at night are ZMA and omega-3s and metformin. Very low dose metformin, like 500 milligrams. And for him, he actually started at 250 just because he's never taken it before and wanted to make sure that his stomach wasn't going to get upset. He started with 250. 250 was fine, and then he stayed at 500. Again, for insulin sensitivity, setting him up to be more insulin sensitive. And because he's already staying up at night, he's by default creating a scenario where he's unnecessarily more insulin resistant than he should be than if he would have gone to bed earlier, right? And so metformin's a good plug right there to just kind of offset any of that. And if he happens to have some food at night, it's going to be somewhat managed, not completely, but somewhat managed. So those are really the only things that I have him taking in the evening, like no matter what, is the metformin, ZMA, omega 3s. And as far as supplements, that's or other things like that, I already mentioned the ashwagandha and GABA, and those are just think, especially the GABA. Think of it more of like something that gets interacted with in your stomach that then translates to your brain of, hey, it's evening time now. Let's start releasing some of these hormones that are evening time hormones to start relaxing, right?
And give you some weird dreams.
Yeah. I'll give you some weird dreams. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then you supplement that with making sure that you have some blue light blocking glasses on and you're not disrupting the release of your nighttime hormones. Now you can go to bed and actually receive a lot of benefit from going to bed. And we've set him up with everything that we did in the morning, right? The copper, the selenium, for his body to have all the substrates to be ready to turn his T4 that's releasing at night, because he's not interfering with it because he's using some blue light blockers, taking some GABA, releasing all the right hormones, which is T4. That does nothing as far as like active. But in the morning, an hour or two before he's about to wake up, that T4, that big pulse of T4, now it gets starting to convert to T3, and cortisol starts to rise, and all the things that happen in the morning. Like maintaining good circadian rhythm is kind of like setting your alarm clock for all the right shit to happen internally, right? Without you having to do any other work mentally. That's super crucial for efficiency.
And this is why it was important to kind of set yourself up. So get your bloods done, get your routine in, get yourself moving, all those kind of things. And even then, you need to be very specific for each individual. Like this is for 80-kilo guy who's doing specific job, more mentally taxing than physically. And at the same time, kind of work out pretty much is physically active every single day. A lot of people who train every single day are oftentimes not very physically active.
Right.
You know, and those things kind of mix and match all the time. I have guys who train really hard and then they give me a feedback, I've done 3,000 steps today. And you're like, yes, that 45 minutes in gym, that's not going to help you because you're not moving at all. You know?
Yep. And so, so just to recap, I didn't give any dosages. I didn't give any calories because none of that shit matters to anybody else other than him.
Yeah.
Like literally. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that. None of that is going to help anybody here. In fact, some of these things may not even be applicable for a different person, even though they
same exact body weight and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Like you may be an 80-kilo young 30-year-old that does sales, but maybe your sales aren't outside. Now you've changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally, you've changed the whole thing.
And this is my argument usually when people go and can you just calculate my this and that? And I'm like, yes, I kind of work, but your specific reason will be completely different. You know, I have guys at 170 kilos body weight who are eating half of what I do. If you follow those calculators online, it's like it will give you some kind of numbers that you can start using to play around with it. But it's probably going to be a wrong number to begin with.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll just leave you with this kind of, a lot of people, this will go over their head. Some people will be like, oh, that's kind of crazy to think about. But you don't actually need a lot of food if you have a lot of sunlight.
Yeah.
I'm just, think about it. Plant takes sunlight, oxygen, and water and makes sugar. Okay. If you remove any one of those, the plant dies, doesn't do very well. Okay.
Yep.
Mitochondria does the exact opposite. It takes sunlight, it takes sugar and oxygen, and makes carbon dioxide, water, and light. It gives off light. Like the reason you have a hot body is because you're giving off infrared light. Okay. So your mitochondria can offset because the sugar, right, is food. Let's just think of it that way. Okay. Is food, all the food that you came in. But if you have less food, but you get more sunlight, the equation still equals you have a lot of energy.
Right? So quick summary is, if you live in UK, you are not getting it. You're in disadvantage.
No, you exactly. That's why I said, that's why I started. Hey, this guy is working outside in the southwest of the United States. He's getting an enormous amount of sunlight. That's an advantage. That's an advantage in every single way that you slice it. So, you really have to think about these things from like really small, the mitochondria, and then really big, where am I at on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And then how all of these collide and be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the plan for this person. And there's some tweaking right there, right? Hey.
And absolutely. And that tweaking would be way harder if you don't cover baseline, what we discussed in this video.
Yes.
And then it would be such a hard guesswork that it would take
it would be
guesswork.
It would be guesswork. You would just be guessing. Yeah, there wouldn't be like an objective way to like tweak something, because you are literally just guessing and hoping that, hey, this change might do this change might do that.
Yeah.
But when you have everything in order like that, then the questions that go back to, hey, are you doing this thing with the thing in the morning? Are you still doing that? Yes. Okay, good. Let's check the next box. Are you doing that? No. Let's fix that then, right? This is where we do the tweaking, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we don't have to hammer it any more than that. I think we laid out a really, really, really good like protocol of
absolutely
everything that goes into helping somebody that's not even necessarily an athlete. He's not even a competitor. He just is a busy person trying to get the most out of life, trying to still be fit and healthy, right?
And let's be honest, even if you are an athlete, this will benefit you greatly, because most of the athletes still have full-time jobs.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So then how do you become an elite athlete and still have a full-time job? How do you become an elite athlete and the job is being the athlete, right? So now the strategy can be taken and expanded upon even further, right? And so, yeah, this is just kind
of that can be made in a million videos afterwards. So really appreciate your time. I think this is very useful to kind of dwell into the thought process about why those first videos were important, why they have to be covered. Because if you don't do that, you kind of not giving yourself any advantage on what can be achieved. You're holding yourself back unnecessary by just skipping such simple things that can give you such great advantage in future, which a lot of people overlook. They just think, I need to count my calories, I need to do my training sessions, and that's it. And you're like, no, you need to be a human being that kind of was designed to walk and get out and do all these things. And there is always a pattern about why some people are way better in terms of their physical performance, health, energy levels than others. And they usually cover the basics that we discussed in videos before.
And they do it all the time. And if they don't, they know where they messed up and they go back and start again.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that is not a habit, right? That's a ritual that's engraved. I am doing this no matter what. It's not like I woke up and accidentally went for a walk. No one does that.
Right. Yes, you're 100% right. Yep.
So, all right, cool. I'm going to catch up with you on next video. Thanks for your time and speak to you soon.
All right.